Good evening. I'm Chuck, and this is my wife Eileen Little, and we're here to share our conversion story. I was raised Baptist, Eileen was raised Presbyterian. We met in college, and then I was drafted into the Army. After I'd been in the Army for a while, we got married, and we traveled from Ohio, where we were married, to Fort Ord, California, where I was stationed. And on that trip we stopped at all the cities on the way, and one of those stops was Salt Lake City. We were there, went through the conversion, or to the visitor center, and had a tremendous experience there. And Eileen can share some of the feelings we had there.
Well, actually, one of the experiences there was the tour guide, as he was explaining what is there at the visitor center. They also talked about the fact that we were saying we were so excited, we had just been married, and he said, "Oh, that's very nice, but you realize, of course, that you got a divorce at the same time." And we looked a little shocked, and he said, "Well, didn't the minister say, and you're married until death do you part?" And we said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, do you really want to quit then? Don't you want to live together forever?" Which was a very interesting thought.
Thought he was being a little bold there when we were just floating, and he was ready to divorce us.
But while we were there in the visitor center, we were mesmerized by the feeling that was there. We, to be honest, had a real hard time buying all the things that were taught, especially the story of Joseph Smith, a 14-year-old boy who gets this incredible revelation. That was a little hard. But at the same time, I remember standing downstairs. We couldn't leave. Well, we left, had dinner, came back. We were just attracted to the place. But I remember standing downstairs in that visitor center and just feeling, almost hearing the words, "This is right." And so we got a copy of the Book of Mormon and several tracts and took them home, read the first few verses of First Nephi, and put it on a shelf.
So we went on to Fort Ord, and I finished my tour duty there, and we just brushed that off, just like we had good sense, and kept going. We finished my tour duty there, moved back to Ohio. We both finished school there, and then we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was working with a CPA firm there. That proverbial missionaries knocked on our door, and Eileen let them in.
And that was a rather interesting experience too, because we had missionaries from other churches knocking at our doors all my life, and never even crossed my mind to actually let them in. But we had been at a wedding reception about 2 months earlier, and there was a woman there who was talking about the fact that these very nice young men came to her door. They were Mormon missionaries, and she let them in, and they talked, and that thought, you could actually let them in, just kind of rolled through my mind, and then rolled past my mind and went out. But that particular day that the missionaries knocked on the door was a bitter cold day in Atlanta. And I opened the door, and they were standing there. I was home from work because I had just recently had our first child. He was 2 months old, and so I was an at-home mom now. So I opened the door, and these missionaries stood there, and one of them said, "I would like to give you the opportunity." Told us who they were, told me who they were, and were so cold that they could hardly even speak the words. But I remembered Lois and thought, okay, well, come on in. And so they came in, and they happened to see our copy of the Book of Mormon on the shelf, and oh, an oldie goldie, and we got out the Book of Mormon and talked about it. And then they said they'd like to have an opportunity to come back and tell us more about the church, and give us an opportunity to pray about it and see if it was true, and set up an appointment when Chuck would be home and we could be taught together.
And I traveled so much, being a CPA throughout Georgia, that we would make an appointment for Thursday night, and then the job wouldn't end, and I'd come back. They taught us for about 6 months.
To get the 6 discussions
to get the 6 discussions, and these boys were just wonderful, and they were patient, and they finally invited us to join the church and
be baptized.
And to be baptized, and we said yes. And what a beginning from that. When I think of why we said yes, we understood some of the doctrine, but what we really understood is that the people were incredible.